this illness didn't just happen to me, it happened to our family.
My basic message is don't give up, don't quit, don't give up.
I can only accept the award on behalf of everyone who helped me get to where I am.
And now I'm not afraid to get well.
I was born here, St. Catharines, raised. I had a great home life. I mean, unlike many other stories that I've heard over the recent years, I had a stable home environment and good parents. And I think it was 14, almost 15, the first time I ever got high on a drug. And, you know, it's just what we did. It was the era, it was the times. But the first time that I used cocaine was probably the turning point, I think. And by spring of '85, I was firmly entrenched in the cocaine culture, the crowd. I had a lot of acquaintances that were from the other side of the law. And I would spend a great deal of time with them and in their environments, in the clubhouses, and you know, and it's spiraling right out of control. Alcohol again was a huge factor, but by this time I was well into freebasing cocaine. Lori left me, took the boys, left for a couple days, went to her parents, and came back on the Sunday, and in no uncertain terms, confronted me and demanded that she wasn't going anywhere, but that I was going to. I was going to go back to treatment. I was going to change, and I was going to become the person that she felt was inside here. This time, I was ready. And I can't say enough about that place. You know, the Donwood, as it was known in those days, the Donwood Institute, helped save my life. There's no doubt in my mind whatsoever. I would not have survived. Today, life is great. Life's wonderful. I mean, I've got all these gifts. I have a loving, beautiful relationship with my wife. 2 great kids. My children, I couldn't be happier. I mean, I have 2 boys. You know, I love nothing better than getting out front and throwing the ball. And I sit on the St. Catharines District Labor Council, for example, and I have, of course, run my program at work, which I call Union Assistance Program. I help out co-workers, family members, friends of theirs. Life today is full of adventure. Looking forward to what's going to happen next.
I was brought up in St. John, New Brunswick, and my father died of a freak accident. We lived on a farm. So at the age of 9, I started to have very bad facial movements called tics. And my mother put me in the hospital and took me out of school at the age of 3. I guess I was going in grade 3 or I was in grade 3. And I was in the hospital, I guess, between 6 to 8 months. Well, when I came out of the hospital, I still had a very slight facial tics. So my mother kept me out of school. So she sent me to Toronto here to live with my grandmother at the age of 13. But when I came, my grandmother said, well, you can't stay here. I mean, you have to work to pay room and board. Now, I had no education. I couldn't read or write. And so I would walk along the streets and stay on the same streets so I wouldn't get lost. And anyways, after that, I went to the clerk. And I was diagnosed with schizophrenia, paranoid schizophrenia at that time. I remember living in very bad bug-infested rooming houses, shared accommodations, a lot of drugs going on. It was just terrible. And having the schizophrenia, hearing voices, very delusional, very isolated, had no family and friends, I started to drink to ease the pain because I didn't feel like I had any dignity, purpose, or even hope. And didn't even want to wake up, didn't even want to exist. It was finally when I got this really good psychiatrist who got me better housing and sent me to a Progress Place. And I can tell you, for the first time in my life, when I walked in, I felt important, wanted, and needed. It was just wonderful. Then I started to work in the downstairs shop, and I started to sell clothes to the other members, which we got great discounts. And I started to dress up and feel good about myself. I'm taking training now for a peer support worker position. And then I'm on the boards for Supportive Housing Coalition and the vice president of this board. I'm also on the boards for Mental Health Housing Services, which we created a dream team, a bunch of consumer survivors, myself, and family members who go out and educate, advocate, and inform. And when I look back and think how bad it was, it's amazing. I pulled myself up, but it was a courage because I wanted to be somebody someday. And I wanted to show people that just because you have mental health issues or alcohol addiction or whatever it might be, that you can do it. And I think it was people believing in me, so I started to believe in myself.
I grew up in Edinburgh and attended Edinburgh University as an undergraduate, and shortly after that graduated, went to graduate school in London. I went from an environment that I was very familiar with, one in which I had a distinct and carefully defined role, into a very hostile, somewhat threatening environment with a lot of new challenges, academic challenges, social challenges, and felt essentially that I didn't fit in. Initially, I realized that there was a problem on the horizon. I was losing weight dramatically, and it was obvious. But I found myself in a grocery store one day, walking up and down the aisles, hypnotized by this huge amount of food around me. The moment of clarity crystallized, and I realized at that point that there was nothing in that store, in that temple of consumption, that was acceptable to me anymore. And at that point, I realized that either I dramatically changed my life or my life was over. The most valuable tool in recovery was actually meeting someone who was not only bright, but interested and extremely well informed, who was prepared to say to me, yes, Ian, you have anorexia nervosa. That's not usual for men. I don't know a great deal about it, but let's learn, and together we'll come through this. Having someone with whom I could share thoughts, fears, doubts, rational or otherwise, without judgment, was extremely valuable. The therapeutic relationship itself was something that was absolutely required for me to offer reassurance that, one, I could recover, that recovery was not only possible, but it was probable. Normal people, completely, people that you meet in the street, people just like me, are capable of extraordinary things and frequently pull off the most amazing recoveries when they're ready to do so, when one or more of the time, place, circumstance, and predisposition are either removed or ameliorated. My environment now is probably much more stressed than it ever was. The demands and responsibilities in my life are more significant than they've ever been. and I'm happier than I've ever been. I feel like I'm living about 3 lives at the moment, as if I'm making up for lost time. I work as a postdoctoral research scientist at University of Toronto. My profession is the study of sexually transmitted diseases. The other 2 spheres that I'm particularly active in are artistic and creative work. I'm a painter and photographer. I use that as recreation and catharsis. The work is in moderate demand. I hope to extend that and to show a little more in the forthcoming year. There's a lot of work effectively on the walls of my apartment right now, ready to go out. I speak at University of Toronto. I also work with Sheena's Place, which is a local resource centre for people with eating disorders. I also work with the National Eating Disorders Information Centre and the Body Image Coalition of Peel. Life on the other side is not perfect, not by any means. It's just better in every way.
I was born in Toronto East End, now called the Beaches, and I went to St. Joseph's Convent School, downtown Bay in Wellesley. And then I went into nursing at St. Michael's Hospital, and my problems started happening in my last year of training. I got hired as the OR coordinator, OR recovery room supervisor at St. Joe's here. And they thought I was having a nervous breakdown. And so she called me into the office, and she didn't say what was wrong. She just said that, she wanted to move me out of the OR. And of course, when I started going, underground, or what I say drowning, that's how I equated it to, I would fight back with anger. Many, many hospitalizations, and at first it was mostly at St. Joe's Hospital, and I used to attend site daycare there. And I had a nurse there that was just excellent, just excellent. After that, the nursing was not so hot. And if I can say one thing about caregivers, is I say to myself, what is psychiatric nursing if it's not communication? And communication is two-way. That means being able to actively listen and care. Probably the main change didn't take place until maybe about 4 years ago. And it's been a gradual uphill to the point where I am what I would consider almost fully recovered. I met Leanne in university in the first class, and we became very, very good friends, and to her detriment, because my God, she has been through hell and wheels with me. She's been there for me in the worst, horrendous times. She has been so patient with me. Like, I suffered from extreme panic attacks. I see myself as an advocate, and I can see where things are wrong and should be changed, and yet, because I've lost the anger, I can look at both sides of the fence with an even keel and think of what would be the best action without, because I used to be very spur of the moment and blast and regret it later, and I keep saying to myself, I've mellowed with age. And of course, I love the computer. My brother, he gave me a computer a couple of years ago, and something I never thought I'd ever be interested in. And he gave me this computer, and I tell you, I used to be a TV addict, but now I'm on the computer all the time. I work on newsletters. I find that is a great way to advocate. I can, I do an in-house news, which we don't have the money to mail out, and I can do that whenever I want. I have met so many people from all walks of life and seen how they live.